Oh, this thing's on. All right. It's been a few hours since the morning lesson. Kind of enjoying the weather. As you can see, it's still raining. Um, yeah. So, just kind of enjoying what's being provided. And yeah, it's an interesting experience. We weren't supposed to be getting any rain, and then it's just been kind of nonstop, I guess, now. So this is where we're at. We're just in this kind of rainy period. May 6th, you know. As you can see, the world is still turning in its own way. I feel blessed with the rain. I feel that it's allowing me more into the flow state that I need to be in to be able to think the things that I need to be able to think. But yeah, that kind of brings up the idea of a catalyst. You're like in this situation, and usually rain sucks, you know, because if you're stuck out into it or whatever, if that's your perception, but you can always reframe it. In this case, I'm in shelter, enjoying the weather, seeing things for what they are, and you know, just absorbing and resting and kind of taking it in where I can. In this case, the raindrops and the sounds they make, you know, it lulls you into a slight degree of slumber on the conscious side if you let it. Thing about me, so a little secret. You might not know about me, Captain, but you know, I'm always lulled into that state. You know, I had that hammered into me not by active choice. It was more of a defense mechanism for me to deal with trauma. So, yeah, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but people who have PTSD, which I'm the proud owner of my own PTSD. Thank you. I earned this trauma. Better flaunt it. Uh, the whole point of what I'm trying to say about that is that I was detaching from everything and everything that I was experiencing in those moments whenever I was kind of having these negative feelings. And I was doing it so much that really what I was happening was I was kind of going, my self-defense mechanism was putting me into a meditative state. And it completely, again, not, I didn't choose to go into that detachment like I did and then accidentally meditate. And because of that, I developed thoughtfulness earlier on in my life than I think a lot of people really, you know, because I mean, you can just go on autopilot when there's nothing wrong, but as soon as the waters get choppy, it might not be a good idea to let the autopilot run you through that. You need to be able to react and all that jazz. So yeah, that's, you know, defense mechanisms there to help you cope with those moments when you can't respond to it, when there is no option to the fight or flight, you know, when there is no, you know, you don't want to just freeze, you know. And the problem with us as human beings is we think in binaries, we think in dualities, you know, it's either or. The old Aristotelian logic. I probably mispronounced that. You know, I'm a reader, not a talker. Well, I'm a talker. It's just I don't talk to. I don't have enough connections, but that benefits me in my situation because it allows me a certain degree of freedom. And you kind of have to recognize that. Like, oh, well, I'm alone, and you know, you can always phrase it in a way that benefits you instead of is a detriment to you. Because I mean, if you're thinking about the negatives, you aren't thinking. You become you become consumed by that. You've effectively allowed something to consume your thoughts and time when there are other things happening that you could be doing. It's sucking up that potential that you have and converting it into something that is not effective for you in your life. So I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't feel bad emotions. Then totally fine. The problem is when you wallow, when you keep revisiting, when you keep magnifying those those things. You know, it's very easy to get caught up into that, and then that can build up because then you create more problems. And then before you know it, you've got this orb of problems, and then all you're doing is pondering in it all day, and you're like, well, you know, why isn't things getting better? And it's like, well, you're not focusing on the right things. You're not focusing on the things that help you grow. You're focusing on the things to focus on this one thing in time that's not going to progress things. So it should be a cue to action. Like how do I deal with this? And sometimes the best way to rage against that is art. As weirdly as that sounds. But an artist would totally know that. But somebody who's a little less proficient, you're kind of like, well, you know, making stuff's nice and all. Well, creation in a creative sense of art is a ritual in of itself. Not like I mean, the reason I say ritual is because there are certain processes that are coming into play. And if anything, you should think of as a ritual as something to spur the mind. It's not, oh, I've done this and this and this, and now I'm, you know, all this. And you know, it's like, great, yeah. Totally great. You know, you go that route. You know, you're more than welcome to use that. But in practical terms, you're applying things to your own life in a way that's going to benefit you if you take that right path, if that makes sense, with your creativity. How do you take the right path? Well, first and foremost, you can't get caught up on all the physical extras. You need to think of it as work. Not work in the way that corporations have designed it, but work that is meaningful and will have a impact beyond what you can actually perceive. You know, like you don't know how your piece of art, whatever it may be, how it may impact the internal world of another person. So I mean, if you think about that, let's think of us all as planets, and we're all our own interstellar species. And your planet has decided it wants to try to make things better for the rest of the planets that are out there. You know, because you have an abundance. And not only do you have an abundance, but you have an abundance in a way that you can provide that to other planets to help them get up to the same level and be in a place of abundance. You know, again, the idea of survival isn't the biggest deal here. So, so what do? You communicate with this other planet, you know, and then like, well, how do I communicate with that planet? Well, a personalized message is nice, but more often than not every planet's going to be conducive to what you're trying to tell them. You know, they're going all dark forest, and they're like, oh, we're gonna kill everybody that we see because we're still afraid of even our own shadow. Like we haven't gotten past that, you know, like we're still causing conflict. So you recognize that the time and effort it's going to take for you to cater that message to each individual to be able to get to this place where you can find other like-minded individuals to create a community, you know, of these different species. You create this community. It's just going to take too long trying to send each individualized message. So what you do is you pull back, and well, I mean, I can't sit there and cater this message to this particular individual and hope it hits everybody. This is like one of the first lessons that I am just realizing in this moment that I was teaching myself with the letter in Project Remission, because that's where it all started, was a letter. Dear V. That was the beginning. If you want to know exactly where the start was Dear V. which wasn't supposed to be D or V. The rest of the name got censored, so that's what it turned into because of the process of art. So whoever V is, maybe this lesson's for you. I think I might have met him. That's the thing. It's like I don't know in the whole scheme of threads. Like I can't see shit, like I'm not seeing the internal mental world. It's all projection of a simulation in my mind of what I've come to know to be true versus what I know not to be true. And the thing is a lot more of what's in the what I know not to be true column. It's like slowly moving into the what I know to be true. So that brings me back to the binary aspect of thought. Again, the non-Aristotelian logic is kind of what we're looking at, where you have 7 different types of situations. And this helps you look at things on a spectrum of, well, we're not working within reality. So, I mean, yes, binary doesn't work the same way there. It's all on probability and possibility, again, like if you think we're quantum fields, which I like, I entertain that idea because I feel that it most resonates with my perspectives and my lived experiences. I mean, it's just it's as scientific as you're going to get in trying to explain the soul and all that jazz. And my problem is I could never get into the woo-woo of a lot of the messages that were out there. I was like, the thing is it's a pill, right? Like knowledge in this case is a pill, and it needs to be in a digestible format, in a way that you can understand it and relate to it. A lot of people are still relating to things from 1,000 years ago, which is great. I mean, historians are great, but historians don't change the world, not directly. Their info is passed on to somebody else that is able to do it, and then you have philosophers who are critiquing everything, but seldom do they provide a solution, because they're synthesizing a cure, but they don't know how to move it from being in the synthetic state into a manufacturable state, if that makes sense. Well, at least not safely. Not in a way that it will be not rejected by the psyche. So, I mean, I guess I could talk about that. So, like, it's religion is all kind of trying to tell us the same thing. That there is another side of things that we're not privy to. And that we should be aware of it because it's there as part of a greater whole. And however you want to perceive that whole is up to you. If I had anything to say, the universe, like the system that's at play. I mean, you can call it the Matrix. Some people might call it God, or whatever they might call it. In my sense, I see it as a system that is working in a way that, at our level of the system, we don't understand. But the work we do is important to that system. And we don't know what the importance of that work is. We don't know what exactly it is that we're doing. And you know what? That's okay. Because, we're really good at our job. So good that something decided that it was going to be a good day to rain on our parade, So, like, what do you do in a world that is like that? It's like you can't expect things to work out in the way that you want them to. And you kind of have to just go with the flow. And that's kind of the reason why I have these videos in the way that I'm doing them, is because I know that the answers I need, and maybe you need, are going to be in that flow state. The thing is it's hard to keep a tangible train of thought in those states. But you can do is leave yourself anchors in your conversation, and you can only really do that by conscious thought. But you can put anchors in your situation and use those to progress across the different spectrums of thought that you've had. So, like, what anchor did I use? So the question is a matter of remembering it. And then you go through the thought processes like, well, you can do the old backtrack, and that helps. But I find if you try to use like a save point, that'll help. So what's our last save point? Oh, we were talking about a religion 1,000 years ago. So I was able to recall a point only because I was consciously aware of making that decision while I was thinking. But that may not be something that you can do. Not in a way that you can do from point A to point B and just automatically. It would be something you would have to work towards. And not only that, but you really just got to know yourself. You have to know how your processes work. In my case, they tried to say that I had ADHD when I was a child, and medication was the solution. As much as I've disliked the things that's happened because of my mother, she did do some things that, when I'm looking back now at the age of 41, be 42 next year or next month. Yeah, so with her situation, she everything she did for me when I was a child, she did for me in my best interest. Didn't circumcise me, as an example. She didn't indoctrinate me into religion in the way that other people in her life did. She's the one that started probably everything with the books and spirituality that she had. I remember reading through her tarot books, when I was young. I remember her having this astrology book and making me wonder, like, well, how do you know anything about somebody just based on their birthday? And it's like, well, if you're just jumping from that to point B, yeah, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, it's just a random number generator, It's like, oh yeah, you can just write whatever, and then people will just place what they feel is right. But then if you actually look at the steps in between and try to understand the thinking that got people to that process, then you might get yourself to a situation where you're like, oh, maybe I do believe that to a certain degree. Maybe it's not the location of the planets, but what happens is that cycles repeat almost in the same precision as where the planets move. No, it's like, oh, okay, well, these are just markers now. These aren't magical fucking planets that are because they were somewhere on that particular day that they do what they do. It's that there are certain aspects of it that resonate true across time when you start looking across history and comparing records, of all these different things. But either way, we're going to go back to the last save point, which was 1,000 years ago with religion, and it all being the same thing, trying to express the same essential truth at the core of it, which is that you are a individual, or a self-perceived individual existing in a system. You could think of it as a factory, you could think of it as a computer farm or whatever. But the thing about this system is it's recursive. Like recursive. It's a spiral. And well, it's more than just a spiral. It's that we at our spot think that everything's a circle, and then you get to a certain point, you start looking at a distance, you'll see, oh well, it's a spiral. And then if you go even further, you might see that spiral's actually a telephone cord, wrapped up into the infinity symbol, and it's lying on the ground next to a car rental place. And you're like thinking, like, why am I seeing this little corded bracelet twisted into an 8? And then your mind kind of looks at it, and then you're like, oh wait, that's a spiral, moving up and down or whichever direction, but it's moving on into infinity. So the thing is, oh shit, now you're making infinity symbols from the fucking original circle. So like, well, how the fuck you gonna wrap your mind around that? Well, you're not supposed to. All it does is it introduces the idea that that infinity bracelet could be, all of its spots in time, everything that led to that point, and then everything after. And then now you're not privy to it because as your perception sees it, you're in that one present moment, right? Like you can't exist past that one space and time, but you can move in three directions in this particular reality, you know? So like you can do something concretely with what's given to you versus something that say would be one-dimensional space and the three-dimensional time, and it can only be in one space. The perception of that space is a different thing, though. It's like if you draw the picture back, at what point does the line become a dot, So, I mean, one place could be a line, and that line could be associated with somebody's life, But again, this thing's experiencing time on a three-dimensional scale. So then, what does that mean? We're like, oh shit, like you're telling me time's cubed? Not for us. And I don't think in any way that we could ever properly, meaningfully experience it. Shit. I need to get another cigarette. But, so time cubed, you're like, oh shit, how do you add height, width, and length to that? And it's like, well, it's not something you necessarily need to wrap your mind around. More just be aware of that where you're existing, you can only go forward in time. You're on a line. One dimension, essentially, as far as time's concerned, you're an ant on a line. But the thing about it is that line isn't just a straight line. It's a curving, winding, twisting network of veins, if that makes sense. Oh, shit. Just a project I was working on. Maybe I'll show it to you at some point. But yeah, so I gotta remember this one because I didn't save point it. So three-dimensional time. So I that would assume three stages of time, and I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. This is something I come across. Like I can't remember the doctor's name, but this is like quantum physics talking about superluminal, which would be above light, and then subluminal, which would be below light observers, and that really like clicked in with the bell with me because like I'm not gonna sit there and try to justify like spirits in my life. I can't do that. That's not my place. But I can, the idea that there is a superluminal observer of some sort and a method and manner that I cannot perceive answers a lot of questions. Not answers questions, it satisfies conditions. I think that's the better way of putting it. So if these superluminal, let's look at this theoretically, just from the idea, that if there is some such thing as life in that realm, as we know it, something that exerts its will, how does that interact with our reality? Well, it kind of came to me, and this isn't something that's happening just now. This is like about a month ago. But the superluminal observers are creating the probability fields. They don't create anything tangible. That's like the idea of manifestation. It's like, oh, I want this or I want this. And then it's all like, oh, if you do this. And really what's happening is that you're getting a path on those veins kind of worked out for you in ways that you can't really experience. And the thing is that certain things have to work in the network, in the system, for those things to occur. And a system at harmony is going to be more likely to interact more conducively to the rest of the network. So yeah, having that proper harmonic resonance to those connections that creates a more fluid network, and then things can work more towards the favor of everything, because it's really, that's what that is it's trying to get everybody on a path to their best life, if that makes sense. And your best life is, the idea that it's fulfilling in a way that you're contributing to the greater whole. And we're like, I only care about what's going on in my life. Well, the only reason that it's important is your system should be safe for all occupants. It's great in a competitive game whenever everybody's against each other, the design of that is there. But when you have a free, open world determined by free will, the only thing that's determining whether or not you act with any degree of aggression is because you're trying to either A, protect something, or B, you're trying to, well, even that's protection. So you're trying to protect something. It's insecurity, basically. Not an insecurity like, no, you're insecure in one particular place or method, and you have developed mechanisms to protect you. And more often than not, that's what it is. It's just the unconscious. You're just not thinking about it. It's not a thought in your mind. Well, sometimes all it is just bringing that to light, and it's not just you that can apply to. I can apply to things all across the board, kind of like how we talked in the night lessons, like had it not been dark and had it been lit up, he had not, that man wouldn't have been afraid whenever he saw me, and that would make a lot of sense for him to be able to see me clearly, and then because some people can't operate in that unknown space. There's just, that's not how they operate. But yeah, digressing. So yeah, no, going back to 1,000 years, religion's all trying to say the same thing. If you start, like, let's come up with a game idea. All right, this is the backstory for a game. Okay, the idea is that the culture has integrated all of the different cultural beliefs that they have into one system. Okay, and what they did was they found the common denominators, right? Well, what's the common denominators? Well, usually the most successful religions have some sort of resonance with the human spirit. Mostly love, but again, depending on your circumstance, you have enough bad shit happen to you, you can resonate with some pretty bad shit. It's all like state propaganda, Nazi America, or Nazi Germany. Oops, Freudian slip. So, damn, religion. I need to make a new save point. Let's go to look at Christianity. Christianity is probably the most subversive religion. Oh, yeah, you're saying... No, I'm saying that in a good way. Imagine in that unified game that we're talking about, that Christianity's, well, let's not use that, because then it makes people feel attacked, and that's the last thing I want. There was a show called Raised by Wolves, and in that world, the predominant religion was Mithraism, and basically, in that there's the idea of Mithras is the father, and lights and all that, light bringer. He helped man. Like if you see the Torectomy, the idea of that is that he helped man overcome his animal desires. He tamed humanity, essentially. So Mithras having tamed humanity, and again, like a lot of these same allegories are there as Christianity. So I mean, you can go ahead and look at it in that light. But again, I don't want anybody to feel attacked for their beliefs, because your belief system is important to you and it's part of your identity and who you are. I've gone through so many different phases in my life. You know, I mean, I myself was a Christian at one point, but I had negative interactions with certain individuals, which led me down to a different path. But you know, yeah, the God kept meeting me at different places. It was like, all right, yeah, you're gonna go over here. Oh, and then it kept pushing me to other places, and eventually I learned all the things I did, and then I was able to correlate all those things together and understand it in a way that, you know, I can fully recognize. But so Mithraism probably didn't start off as Mithraism in that universe, though. It could have started off as something like a Zoroastrianism as being its predecessor. So if you think about Christianity having the predecessor of Judaism, well, there was no figure of dark in Mithraism. There was the Terectomy, which was, again, like mankind overcoming himself. Well, what was before that? Well, in Zoroastrianism, there was the idea of this one primary, singular, monotheistic deity, and then he went into a duality state, which created good and evil. Ahriman. What's the good? I forgot the name of the good. Write it in the comments if you can remind me. I'm not going to dwell on it too long. Could sure use that guy's help. So yeah. So now you've had some problems, like, with this religion, you know, because it creates a situation where, well, we're operating in dualities. Now we have an enemy. Not only now we've kind of, you know, conquered our bestial side. You know, we're not tame enough to not attack other animals in the cage, and, you know, whatever's at the top's not benefiting from that. It needs a more structured environment for it to chill. But so yeah, religious ideas, you know, it's like, well, those can easily get perverted, and as they do, you know, I mean, you should consider those things like as we do the seasons. There's a time for everything, you know, and then once that time is up, it's time for the new. And if you don't update to the time, you alienate, and then large swaths of your target audience aren't interested in your subject matter anymore. You know, like, that's old stuff. You know, that doesn't apply to me. Like, you know, those metaphors don't answer shit for me. But going back to being Mithraism as being subversive of Zoroastrianism, yes, I made sure to save this time. The big aspect of that is that the Mithraic figure, or, you know, maybe Jesus Christ, if you're looking at it from your Christian perspective, was probably the most subversive figure in all of history as far as religion goes. Don't get me wrong, Buddha's pretty subversive too, you know, but Christ beats him in that way that he subverts the previous religion, which was built up on homage to a singular creator and to devote all that energy to it. And Christ turned around and said, yes, you know, that's not the right God, essentially. And, you know, his God's up on high, past that one. And, yeah, it creates situations, you know, like, whole power structures start changing, you know. These things can see both ways, and it's seeing paths, and it's seeing a lot of paths leading to places it doesn't like, because now all of a sudden people are being nice to each other always, and it's not getting anything done. It's not getting a world built that benefits it. So Christ basically threw a stick in the spoke on that one. And then to be able to go forward and then take all that anger for the situation and what it was going to turn into, you know, it's like, well, you know, I'll take the punishment, you know, like, I know what I did, you know, I fucking pissed off God, you know, not only did I follow his covenant, but I essentially fucking called him out, you know, in a way that nobody, that he can't ignore, you know, and now all of a sudden he's all embarrassed and shit, and I was like, what? And it's like, what are these people saying about me? And then what, they're listening to this dude? No, fuck this dude. Which turned out to be the worst fucking possible thing it could do, which is hilarious. It's like, yeah, you can strike me down, but you don't know how much more powerful I become. So you have this figure that resonates across time, this figure of love, and that sacrifice of that figure to remind you of the infinite nature of your spirit. And then I'm not saying that in a religious sense. I'm saying that in the potential that your quantum field provides to collapsing the wave function of the possibilities from higher up on the system, if that makes sense. So once you start looking at it that, you know, like, oh, well, a lot of shit starts making sense. Why would a deity want my attention? You know, why would they want that? Well, it's because they feed on your attention. That's how they gain nourishment. And those symbols act as like hoses, maybe? I don't know. That's kind of what came into my mind. So you're connected up to that higher reality, that quantum reality. Little do you know, but like there are hoses attached to, you know, connections between your quantum field and the larger quantum field at hand. That's obviously, I mean, that's how I perceive it. It could be the same size. It could be two little dots, like literally all of humanity sitting here, and we're literally one dot, and then off to the offset on the other side is a dot of similar size and stature, but as it realizes that it can kind of trick you into thinking that it's bigger than it is, so it does. Does that make sense? You know, it's like a animal that makes itself bigger to scare its you know, whatever predator might be trying to get it. You know, frilled lizard be a good example. You know, popping out that fan and be like, look, I'm bigger than you, you know, or I'm bigger than you thought, you know. So maybe it's doing that the whole time as well. Because I mean, something that's not afraid wouldn't care about its camouflage. If it's completely invulnerable, not threatening, it would be predominantly in our lives in a way that it would be, I don't think it would care, and it would make sure that it's So we're going to change subjects, because that's usually what that means. That old spooky goose. Still raining. Got a little creek going. It's not as bad. It's still raining though. So, but yeah. Oh, a little bit of tree fell down. Well, that reminded me of the red woman in The Matrix. And then sometimes what they're trying to, well, sometimes what somebody's trying to convey to you is on the reverse side of duality, right? So, like the thunder there was my lady in red. It was a distraction. It pulled me away from where I was going with my thoughts. Maybe I was treading down a bad place. I don't remember. I've already forgotten, you know, whatever that is. I don't remember anything that I say most of the time. Like, what I say is what I say, and then I come back and listen to it later. I'm like, holy shit, where did that come from? Not to toot my own horn or anything. Yeah, like, I'm not special in the whole spectrum of things. I'm unique. You know, I'm not better or worse than any of the other parts that exist around me. if that makes sense to you. I recognize that fully. You know, I just recognize that I have certain strengths in certain places because of the mechanisms I developed from the trauma in my life that suited me to a certain way. And damn it, I don't want to go back that far. Okay, so totally haven't saved. We're gonna scrub. Okay, wait, yeah, Lady in Red. There we go. I remember because the thunder. Right, we're saving it. Thunder, Lady Red. So like, distractions sometimes provide you an opportunity to avoid something that might be a misstep, if that makes sense. So yeah, in the Matrix, it's like, oh yeah, look there. Oh, turn back around. He's got a gun pointing in your face. You know, like, you let yourself be distracted. And it was like, no, it was when I turned back around and I looked at him again, you know, beyond what the moment called for, because it was totally called for him to see the Lady in Red. Like, that was expected, programmed. But when he turned back again, that's when he collapsed the wave function, you know, a second time. So sometimes what you need to do is let the situation kind of run over you. But the second you start trying to repeat that, you're trying to repeat a path you've already passed. You can't go back to that path. You're in a new structure. You know, you can't repeat. It's like synchronicity. You're never going to have the same synchronicity hit you twice in the same way. It's like lightning. It happens at a very specific time. And the reason that you can't have that happen again, you can't test it against hypothesis, is because you're not able to reverse time and try to go on a different path to see what happens. You're literally trying the same thing, but the place and time is different. You know, it's not, there is no proper timing to that. And without proper timing, you know, like, you know, there is no plan. Just call it that. Because, I mean, every system has a plan. But, yeah, Lady in Red reminds you that, you know, there's nothing wrong looking at the Lady in Red. What it is when you're trying to repeat that process. And you can quite easily walk yourself to that proverbial barrel in the gun at that point. So, I mean, that's really the lesson that I took from it. At least from what I'm understanding now in my present moment. Yeah. You know, let's change it up a little bit. I'm going to say, I hope you're doing well. I know that I have my own perceived sufferings and problems, but in my situation, I recognize that I'm part of a community, and even though I haven't connected to that community in the way that I would like, I still feel that I'm moving through the paths to where I need to go. And that, you know, maybe I'll make some more connections, you know, with certain individuals. I'm not looking for, like, oh, we like a best friend. No, I mean inspiration. I get a lot of inspiration from other people. And, you know, it goes like art's super important. I mean, if you're doing art, you need to keep doing it. If you're not doing art, yeah, you need to get up on it at some point. Don't feel rushed. I mean, I spent years learning in ways, you know, again, it's just fuck around and find out. It's just whether or not you want to put your efforts towards it. But when life's bad, it's kind of hard to have the energy to do it. So it falls on the people who are able to do it when they can do it. You know, and that, if you think of it like that, it's a certain duty, you know, a duty not just to yourself, but duty to your fellow human being. You know, duty to your brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, daughters and sons. But yeah, I have... Alright, guess we're not going down that train of thought. rain gives such a potential to the air and how it does things. You know, like there's a value to that, and understanding and listening to that. Um, Animals too. I mean, that was like a lesson from one person before I lost them. That animals are really a place you should apply some focus. Um, Generally know that something's safe when you hear the animals still cooing and stuff. Say, the world ends tomorrow. Cthulhu has raised from the sea. I swear I didn't summon him this time. But he's raised from the sea and everything's gone bad. The fucking animals are going to let you know. They're going to be like, well, you see it with weather. They're so far more in tune with whatever, like the magnetic sphere. They're more in tune with that than we could ever realize. I mean, yeah. Birds aren't real, right? I mean, it's still. You want to look at things from trigger to, like, I guess action, trigger, reaction. How things work that way. And then how reaction can easily be an action, and action can be reaction. Just not in the way that you recognize it. Because again, like, the three flows of time thing, that's something else I missed earlier. I'm just getting thrown back. I guess she wants me to reiterate. So one-dimensional space, three-dimensional time. I got led down this Vajrayana Buddhism research tangent just a few months ago. I mean, if you look through my stuff, I'm pretty sure you can figure out about right when. I had a lot of answers come from that. A lot of answers. Like, whoever's going to have an answer to the ultimate problem is going to have it because they've gone through and done the homework. And taken what's been collectively said and form it into one solid narrative, and one that's not based on worship of something, but rather a partnership, if that makes sense. Because I mean, that's how this world works. You count 1 through 10, it always counts back down to 1, and then like, oh, we're all going to become one. No, it's that we're all in one system, and then we're all working in harmony. But every system has a tendency towards this entropy, and I think the hardest problem, at least from a mental perspective, in that entropy is moving from the idea of 2 back to 1, because you need to be able to rationalize that in a way that your mind can understand it and digest it and accept it. If someone just tells you, "Oh yes, you are part of this whole massive structure. You are part of God. You are this." They're asking you to jump a lot of hurdles to get to that point to believe that. And it's all like, come on, man, you got at least give me a first date before you start trying to kiss me. Like you've got to come across, in the rope metaphor I made before, knots. You have to take the steps to get to that point. And if we're going to have a proper, I guess, school of thought, if you want to call it that, I don't want to call it religion, but if you're going to have one type of school of thought, it's to help the person get to the point where they can create a structure in their own mind. I mean, like, totally, like Nietzsche and his proclamation that God is dead was really not a proclamation of this anthropological thing being dead. It was the structures it provided. It was it was what everybody could talk to each other and understand what they were talking about because they all had the same lexicons and same vernaculars, and not in a conscious sense, in the unconscious sense. That's the one thing that unified religion does provide us as a lesson, is that you need commonality. You know, you need to be able to structure these things in a way that people can communicate these ideas. And that's pretty much what the job of the artist has been, is to do that. But yeah, so with the death of those structures, which, I mean, if there is something nefarious, there's, like, say, let's just call it the other. If there is the other that doesn't want us in a evolving state, and it wants to stagnate the system and keep things the way they are so we can enjoy the way the things are. You know, you experience that in your own life. I mean, at least I have. Complacency, you know, the idea of comfort. I've indulged fully in on that. So I mean, I'm definitely not judgmental on that at all. I mean, it's nice. You know, it's nice just to be able to enjoy reality for what it is. You know, to be able to forget, you know, like all the pain and suffering and, you know, people being erased from your life in ways that you can't comprehend. You No, I'm not doing that. You definitely find peace there, peace in the dark. Dark not being, oh, evil. Dark is in being ignorant. Dark is being without clarity. You know, and as soon as you add light to that, that's when the real fear comes. It's not in the dark that you're really afraid. It's when the light comes forth and you see and you find out what's in the dark. That's the moment where the real fear that strikes you, you know, that paralyzes you in your steps, and you can't move, and you're seeing this thing bearing you wide open. It's just like looking at you, and then every essence of you is being, you know, burned in a ways that you couldn't perceive. And, you know, like, you didn't think you could scream in that sort of agony, that sort of pain, that sort of detriment to, you know, even just your soul, you know. And then, I mean, and then you die, like, in some way, you know. And then the question is, like, well, how do you deal with that, you know? Just go with the flow, or give it the middle finger and say, I refuse, you know. And recognize that terror and that fear that you're feeling isn't really what it is. It's a projection. It's a projection of fear, of insecurity. And that resonates across all realms of mentality. I don't care who you are, what you think you are. And then there's power in recognizing that. And that, you know, that you're sovereign in your own right, and that you're unalienable in your own right. You can only really absorb what you choose to absorb. I mean, it's not a reality until you view it, until you experience it, until you observe it. Now, for somebody else, that might be their reality because they've observed it. But until you come into aware of something, it's not a structure in your life. It doesn't exist as a house, you know. It's not something that you have to worry about, you know. Yes, my house is clean, Electric Wizard. I appreciate you. I don't know. Either way, I hope the day is treating you well. Hopefully you're not too consumed in your thoughts. But, you know, that's what rainy days provide us, right? Little moments, you know. Yeah, that. Yep. Moments in the rain. Yep. Like tears. I get it. Okay. Blade Runner reference. Gotta get all dramatic. But yeah, on that note, it's all turtles down, all the way down. Going back to that recursive universe, it goes both ways. But the thing is it's always turtles. Why is it turtles? Well, it's a symbol that everything on every layer of dimensional reality, you know, they're all at the base the same thing. So it's just a matter of understanding where you're on equal footing. Um, there's also rules. One thing we always should thank science for is their stringent approach to understanding rules. Um, but I mean that can be a double-edged sword, you know. Like that's like looking in a hole and putting your torch up to it. And like, well, everything that we've been doing up here above the hole would work, but there's no light down there, and our torch isn't good enough to be able to do work down there. So, as a result, you don't work down there. And you like, and then you see people working down there, like, what the fuck are you doing? You can't see anything. Like, yeah, well, I feel like I'm getting some good work done down here. And it sure sounds like I'm getting some good work done. I just can't see it. Well, you need to get the fuck out of that hole and get up here and do some real work before you make the rest of us look like fucking fools, because they think that's what we do. So I understand the mentality, you know. I mean, it's also a product of the world we live in, you know. Like, science is so important, but then, like, how do you make money off of it? And then your capitalistic system's dug its claws into that, you know, just like everything else. It's strangled the joy out of living wherever it can, you know. It's like a boa constrictor. Uh, Thing is, though, is its mouth is too big, or its appetite is too big for its mouth. That's it. I don't want to get you misled on that. Yeah, again, always try to see the opposites in things. You know, if something's trying to explain something to you, reframe it. Again, using my tarot method for upright, inverted. Sorry, going backwards. Inverted, reverted, subverted. Uh, yeah, try to approach your symbols with that, because then you might realize that they're much more alive in what they're trying to tell you, and that it's not just it's like your first girlfriend, you know. You're like, oh, you think she's this, you think she's that, you know. You're all looking at things from a perspective of you as, you know, like main character energy. You got main character energy, you know. She's a supporting cast in your life, and she's supposed to provide you some things. But the thing is, you're not realizing that she's her own main character, and she's got her own aspirations and her own dreams, and you don't really think beyond. You don't think, you're not operating from a place of love. You're well, at least not for her, but more of a love of experience, which is, it's part of the life of human life. I mean, it sucks that it goes the way that it does, and it's as messy as it is. At least for people like myself. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of you have had your own early experiences being messy, and definitely probably don't want to talk about them. You know, definitely doesn't put you in the best of light. I'm not like I was. I'm now making myself look bad. But either way, so the idea is that you're not aware of like this internal world of this other person, and then you're not operating from a place to better that. So she's not going to experience the, you know, the Disney love story, because you're busy doing your knight's quest in your mind. You know, if that makes sense. You know, you're doing your own hero's journey, but you're not taking any kind of privy and understanding of other people's, and not seeing how you contribute to that. At least in my case, that's why those relationships failed. You know, I was more focused on the internal me, and I didn't think about the internal her. And you know, that's something that if I could pass on to anybody of a younger age, is definitely take that in consideration. You know, respect other people's internal sovereignty. You know, otherwise you're disrespecting your own. You gotta think about giving gifts. It's just like receiving gifts. because I know that I'm fucking hard-headed as fuck and I don't want help. And I know come across a question today about like why do you continue to do this? Like, and I mean it's pretty simple. I mean it's all a frame of thought. I mean it's pretty simple. I mean I'm making it. I don't want to degrade you, making you think that it's simple when you see it, when you hear it, when you know it. When you have those working in tandem with you, then things come to play. But I ended up telling this person why. You know, why is the suffering is worth it. It's in a YouTube comment somewhere. I'm sure if some human being wants to find it, they'll find it. But on that note, I feel like I've taken a lot of your time up. You should probably, go and play in the sun while I sit out here in the rain. And yeah, I hope your day treats you well. Love you. Bye.